I am Marjorie, and I'm a watercolor artist. This is my studio I'm sitting in, and I enjoy every day trying to paint what I'm thinking about. My father was a painter. He always painted watercolors every day, whenever he could, at the weekends, I should say. And he was always painting, and he would paint outdoors, indoors. He would do portraits. So I grew up with painting all around me. At 13, I went to a special high school where they specialized in art. And there I learned watercolor painting and all the other skills that one needs. And when I was 17, I left high school and went into the theater business. I decided I wanted to design and make costumes for theater. And so for the next several years, 8 years, I spent 8 years touring and working in theater with all kinds, and seeing the work of all kinds of designers and scenic designers and costume designers and working with them. The last tour I went on was with a ballet company, and it was on that tour that I realized that spending 2 weeks in this place and then moving on and 2 weeks into another city and then moving on again, I wasn't making any friends. I didn't feel settled. So when I came back to England from the last tour, I decided to do something different. And I went to look for a job with children. I went to one of the organizations that works with children and told them I wanted to work with this. And they asked me, well, what degree do you have? And I didn't have any degree, whatever. I could paint and I could sew, but I had no degree that allowed me to work with children. So she told me, well, you can get a degree, why don't you apply? They have a special program at the London School of Economics. So I applied. I went along, I had no idea what university was like, what it meant going to university, but I'll try. I went to all the interviews and the essay writing and the IQ test, and I was accepted. And at 25, I was going into a whole new era in my life. And again, this was like one of those moments when things change. And my first day at the university, again, was as if my brain opened up. It had been so closed for so long. And it was just like a revelation to me, hearing words that I'd only ever read up to that point, and wondering what a word meant, and realizing that my understanding of the word in my head was different from how it sounded when it was spoken. I'd never heard, particular words spoken before. And so again, going to that university, and I was there then for 4 years, was another revelation for me. Just woke up my brain, I guess is the only way I can describe it. And at the end of those 4 years, of course, I had met someone and I was married, and I took my final exams while I was pregnant. My husband was doing his master's in another part of England, so we moved to Wales. And while I was in Wales, I gave birth to my son and spent my time sewing again, which I could do, and to help us save money for the next part of our journey. My husband then wanted to do his PhD, and we had two choices. He was a biochemist, so we had two choices: Helsinki or San Diego. And he was from South Africa, so we chose San Diego. Somehow I wanted to continue my education, but I also wanted to teach. I didn't really know who I truly was. At that time, I was working with children who were in care of the state, and I was working with young girls who were 11 years old, and we were having a meeting, and I was in a circle and talking to the girls, and suddenly everything was going fine, and they were chatting, and suddenly I had an experience where I felt like gold was just pouring over me. And I felt like everything inside of me was in absolute, complete harmony with the universe. It was a very brief moment and a very brief feeling, but it just felt beautiful and calm and complete. And from that moment on is when I turned my head. I turned away from old books I was reading into the new books, and that's when I found this book by Thomas Merton called The Seven-Storey Mountain. And that turned me into a whole different reading section in the library. Instead of going to the old World War II books, you know, I'd gone through World War II, I started reading spiritual books, all kinds of spiritual books, you know, witches' books, you know, seers' books and Catholic books, you know, spiritual books, every single kind you can imagine. And when I decided then to go to try the Catholic Church after reading Thomas Merton's book, that's when the priest there guided me into the books to read. And that began my journey into the church. And I was baptized into the church with my son was 8 years old by that time. And there was myself, my son, and the priest in the church, and one lady he brought in as a witness, because I didn't know any Catholics. And he baptized me. And the moment he baptized me, I felt as if a whole weight completely lifted off my shoulders. And it was a very freeing moment of the sensation that just through my body, just literally lifted this heavy, heavy weight. Moving on in the church, I got very involved with the healing ministry. I became a secular Carmelite and started learning how to meditate and to do inner prayer work, and then eventually went on my 7-day silent retreat. And so when I went on my 7-day retreat, I took this dream that I'd had and painted it. I thought, I need to understand this dream. And the dark figure that was in the cave looking out into the green fields, but not moving out into the green fields, was just sitting there in the dark. I started asking questions. I realized it was probably representing me. And that's when I started finding out I was playing these different roles in life. I'd have a role as a mother, I'd have a role as a sister, I'd have a role as a daughter, I'd have a role as a wife. And each time I played these roles, I was trying to live up to other people's expectations of whom I should be. I was dealing with all of these different feelings and these different expectations I was trying to live up to. And I was trying to make it me. What did I want? Who am I? And instead of trying to please everybody. The following year, on a 30-day silent retreat, it's not an easy thing to do, to be silent for 30 days. I went again, I took my paints, this time with a purpose, really knowing what I was going to be doing, that I was going to be writing my journal, painting and seeing what I could dig out of myself, what deeper part of myself I could understand. The next stage is when I had moved to Baraboo, and I was still not a bit certain about who I was, who am I. That was where I joined a writing group with Julie Tayard Johnson, and a committed writing where you committed to show up every week for a year. I was able to see myself more clearly, and It wasn't something that happened overnight, although I would get realizations every so often. Something would trigger and I would get healed of a certain event that may have happened in the past, some problem that I'd had with a person, and I would figure out a way to go and look at that person with a different light and get healed of the situation. And a lot of the healing would go on with my father, my relationship with my father, my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my husband. Bit by bit, little parts of those would get healed and I'd feel more and more whole. Finally, the writing group, and I also painted as well as writing. That was when I finally put the first book together, which included the original writings of my woman's journey and the paintings in color. I had that book put together and I was able to share that with people and share that book. And with the feedback from the book, people reading the book, I was able to understand that my experiences were helping them to heal. As I was healing and painting my healing pictures, they were helping other people to heal. And so I began to understand who I am. You know, that was part of my journey in life, was helping others to heal. As I come into I guess, my final years, and I think to myself, what can I do? I have possibly 10 years left in my life to help people. And painting seems to be the way for me, and maybe writing a little, painting and doing some writings that go along with the paintings. And that's what I can do. I have a prayer I say every morning. It's not a prayer, it's a declaration. It's I am who I am who is within me. And I see God as a person. I'm within God, and God is within me. God is within everything and everyone is within God. So we're all one. And it's not a matter of going to church. I don't go to church anymore. I just spend time each morning just being who I am. You know, in the end, you can't pretend anymore or putting on that mask that's hiding who you are. I think being vulnerable can be very scary, but it's okay because people will still like you when they find out who you are. You have to understand that, and it's hard to understand that sometimes if you've been hiding for a long time. It's hard to step out and be vulnerable. So I've still got a ways to go. But I've got